There
Good to
was
be with you,
there
Karina.
was so much fear that these Trump tariffs would lead to a recession right here in the US and globally. That did not happen, but global growth has been impacted. Have these tariffs achieved what Trump pledged that they would do financially?
Well, it depends on what spin doctor you're listening to. If you're listening to the White House, it's all, uh, you know, to the glory of tariffs. The reason the economy is doing pretty well, tariffs and so forth and so on. But that's not my take on the picture at all. Uh, you've really had four acts that have occurred. It's kind of a four-act play. Act one was in January and March of this year when Trump came into office, and that was one of a war cry when he was threatening tariffs, punitive tariffs on everybody, and he was actually going to use tariffs to take over Canada and Greenland, and that of course didn't work out. He backed down and came off of that war cry. Then we had Act Two, that was April and June, and that Liberation Day, remember, was April 2nd. And that's when reciprocal tariffs were announced that were based on kind of a childish formula that was laughable. And the markets tanked right away, and Trump backed off. So that was Act Two. Then Act Three was kind of a cautious offensive from July to September. Trump kept a lot of pressure on trading partners, and some of them basically caved in to kind of this gunboat diplomacy and signed deals that had no legal basis whatsoever. But the European Union, for example, came to an agreement with the United States. So that was Act Three, and then Act Four is kind of what I call the armistice, and that was from October to December. And the big thing then was China displayed that it had a lot of firepower, and it wasn't going to back down from Trump's threats. And as a result, Trump did back off and calm down. He even though he threatened to put tariffs on pharmaceuticals and semiconductors in China, he didn't ever follow through on that. So we ended the year with the average tariff imposed by the United States being 15%, which was the highest it's ever been since 1935. So that's the end of the four-act play. Now the question is, what's going to happen next year? And I think the big thing with regard to China in particular, there's been almost no talk about exchange rates, the exchange rate between the Chinese yuan and the US dollar. And I think the US probably will bring that up and indicate that the Chinese have been somehow manipulating the currency and it's undervalued, and that's assisting China in its uh, exportation of goods and services.
Yeah,
So that's
that's
kind of a thumbnail sketch of how I see things. By the way, I do think fundamentally, as a free trader, I think the arguments being used to support the tariffs and the whole premise of the tariffs is nonsense, because the premise is that somehow foreigners are engaged in nefarious activities, manipulating exchange rates, trade rules, and tariffs, quotas, and so forth of their own, and that this is causing the trade deficit in the United States. Well, that's not true. The fact that we have a trade deficit, if you take the accounting identity, consumption plus investment plus government expenditures plus the international account, that equals GDP, the gross national product. Well, if you take consumption plus investment plus government, if those three things are greater than GDP, where is the international trade account? It's a negative of exactly what the gap is. And who causes that? It's excess spending in the United States. It's not foreigners that cause the trade deficit. We've had a trade deficit every year since 1975 because spending in the United States, consumption plus investment plus government spending exceeds GDP in the United States. And by definition, we have to have the gap filled with a trade deficit. And that's really not it's caused by Americans, number one. It's
All right.
not caused by foreigners.
Professor, I want to
And
ask
number
you.
two, it's not really a problem. We can finance it easily.
Let me ask you this, Professor. What do you make of China's pledge to reduce tariffs on about 900 products in the new year? How does that impact China's position as a leading global trading partner, with the U.S. and China obviously being the two largest economies in the world?
Oh, this is exactly the kind of advice I was giving President Reagan when I was on a President's Council of Economic Advisors. China's doing exactly the right thing. They're making friends because the Chinese want to make trade. They want to make commerce. And if you're making commerce and making it easier to make commerce, you're making friends. The U.S. is taking the other position. They want to threaten people. They want to weaponize tariffs and make enemies and stop trade. So China's, it's very interesting. You have a communist government that are free traders. They want to just do business.